In November 2020, 15 Asia-Pacific nations signed the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, the largest trade agreement ever by global GDP. RCEP includes China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and the 10 ASEAN nations. It covers nearly a third of the world's population and 30% of global GDP. The agreement began implementation in 2022 and brings China, Japan, and South Korea into a single trade framework. RCEP reflects a trend toward mega-regional agreements that shape trade rules across regions rather than individual countries. The CPTPP, involving 11 Pacific Rim nations, exemplifies this, as does the African Continental Free Trade Area. Such agreements signify that bilateral deals are no longer sufficient for modern trade. However, mega-regional agreements like RCEP face challenges. Negotiating diverse countries with varied economic structures and political priorities complicates agreement. RCEP's provisions on services, intellectual property, and labor are less ambitious than those in CPTPP, reflecting necessary compromises. The question remains whether shallow agreements like RCEP can deepen over time or will merely facilitate incremental liberalization. Trade agreements are increasingly influenced by geopolitical competition, especially between the U.S. and China. The U.S. advocates friend-shoring and near-shoring, while the EU imposes standards on partners. China uses the Belt and Road Initiative to strengthen trade relationships. Countries like Korea, balancing ties to both nations, face complex choices. Trade agreements now serve as tools of geopolitical strategy. Digital trade is another frontier. Cross-border data flows and digital services taxation present contentious issues. Recent agreements establish rules, but approaches differ significantly. The U.S. promotes free data flow, while the EU emphasizes data privacy, and China insists on control. This fragmentation complicates establishing a global digital trade framework. The future of trade agreements hinges on two competing visions. One seeks deep economic integration, the other focuses on building geopolitical blocs. Currently, RCEP fosters integration among Asian economies, while U.S.-China tech decoupling signals fragmentation. The question is whether agreements will open markets or manage competition. The answer relies on actions by governments, businesses, and citizens. Discussion questions. 1. What are the advantages and risks of mega-regional agreements like RCEP compared to bilateral deals? 2. How should trade negotiators from countries dependent on both the U.S. and China approach negotiations? 3. Is a global consensus on digital trade rules feasible, or will competing regulatory blocs arise? 4. Which vision of trade agreements do you believe will prevail in the next decade? How should businesses adapt?